I'm so glad to be here in Prattville with you today, talking about books, my favorite subject. We'll just walk through the door over here that has just been freshly painted and go inside to my office, which is right behind this calera bush over here. Come on in. Let's have a chat. Hello, I'm Kathleen Thompson. I didn't always call myself a writer, but I believe when I moved to Prattville in the 1980s, I became a writer. I had been writing a lot, of course, for school, getting a degree in English and starting a master's degree until a little baby girl interrupted. So I had been writing a lot, but there's a little bit of clout that goes along with saying I'm a writer, because, you know, what is a writer? Is someone who writes, I finally decided. And in Prattville, I wrote. I went to Sue Scalf's house on Valentine's Day, 1981, and met with the Prattville creative writers. And there I heard Sue, who was a great poet, by the way, say that she was just tired of getting honorable mentions in these contests. And I thought to myself, oh my God, she's tired of getting honorable mentions. You know, I would die to get an honorable mention on a poem I'd written or anything else. And as it turned out, I did write a short story for a short story contest that year. And a person in Montgomery named Helen Norris Bell judged that contest. That story won first place. It would later become my first novel, and Helen Norris would be the person who influenced me very much in my writing. She is now in the Writers' Hall of Fame, thanks to my nomination of that office. And so I became a writer. One thinks that you can be only a writer if you're published. And there's a little bit of that in me, but it took me 2 decades to be published in an entity. And my first book was a little chapbook called Searching for Ambergris. This is called The Nights, the Days, and it was submitted to a poetry contest by Negative Capability, Sue Walker in Mobile, and it won. So I enjoyed that. Also, you'll note the artwork on all these I'm going to show you. They are done by friends. I don't have time to say all of them, but this is from my friend Brenda Thornton, who is an artist and lives in Montgomery. Is my dear friend Carolyn Watson's artwork on the front. It has more pages, that's why it's a book length. And on this one, I actually have an endorsement by Nell Harper Lee, which I treasure. And Greg Pape was my teacher for the Master of Fine Arts program at Spalding. He also has a blurb, there it is. And so I'm very proud of those endorsements. And again, the beautiful artwork. Now this is sort of a bridge between the poetry books and my short stories. And now this is my last poetry publication. So I began to submit short stories to various magazines and anthologies. Climbing Mount Cheehaw, which is edited by Don Noble, married to the poet laureate of our great state, Alabama. Bell's Letters. Not belles lettres, but good old Alabama stories by women. And Christmas is a Season. And one of those, my story was nominated for the Pushcart. I am very proud of my latest work, mainly because it contains some characters who live in Alabama James Slow had a piece of artwork that I fell in love with it first time I saw it in Gordo. His wife Betty Slow works at the Tuscaloosa News, so you may have read her columns. This is my newest book, A Tale of Three Women. But in this book, there are several themes that may come to mind just looking at the title of it and looking at the figure that Jim created. And by the way, my precious grandson, Nicholas, was the fellow who designed this cover from that piece of artwork. I'm very proud of that too. But you may think about Icarus, the story of Icarus and how he flew too close to the sun with his waxen wings. Most writers don't think of these themes when they're writing them, but after they're done, the book is done, you do think of this. And I didn't think of it until after the book was printed. But I looked at it and I thought, Jimmy Clyde, who is a character in the story, has not flown close enough to the sun yet in this book to have his wings melt. But a situation develops with a case of mistaken identity that may cause him to go too far. Now, A Tale of Three Women, who does that remind you of? It's vaguely reminiscent of Charles Dickens' story, A Tale of Two Cities. But totally different, of course. But anytime there's a story of mistaken identity or a little mishap that is coincidental, but you can't imagine how it happened, there's always a little intrigue about what's involved for me. And that is the case here, A Tale of Three Women. But there's a delightful bookstore in Tuscaloosa that I'd like to suggest that the readers can find this, and that is Ernest and Hadley. The store is as intriguing as the two women who run it. Now I'd like to read you an excerpt from my newest work, a novella, which is A Tale of Three Women. Miss Madeira gathered up Jimmy Clyde's clothes, which he had folded neatly on the front porch, and put them into the washer before she went to bed. She set the table for two for breakfast and checked to be sure she had eggs. She was an early riser. The next morning, she quietly mixed up a batch of blueberry muffins and set the eggs out of the refrigerator. Then she went outside and hung Jimmy Clyde's clean clothes on the line. It was warm and bright already, a cloudless sky. The raveling threads at the bottom of his pants leg tugged at her. She looked back at the clothesline and thought how very strange it seemed to have a pair of men's boxer shorts pinned up with clothespins, to have pinned those print boxers up there herself. The first ever since her daddy died. She felt her face warming. She was glad she had no immediate neighbors and that her house was set well back off the road. "Morning, Miss Madeira." "Good morning, Jimmy Clyde." She had not heard him come in and hoped her face was not flushed. "Son'll have your clothes dried in no time." "But you shouldn't have done that," he protested. Probably not, she thought. She felt timid and didn't know what to say. He went on. "I was dead asleep until some mighty good smells woke me up." He ate his 3 sunny-side-up eggs with bacon and blueberry muffins the way her daddy used to. She sat across from him and watched him with the same hungry relish her daddy did, as if this might be his last meal. The same satisfaction of draining that last sip of coffee from the second cup. "You were wrong, Miss Madeira." "Wrong?" "About not being good at anything. You're good at a lot of things." Madeira May felt her face glowing again. "Besides cooking, I mean. You're mighty good at teaching kids how to read, even me. Anybody around here will tell you you're the best first-grade teacher there ever was, and not a teacher in the school could top your bulletin boards." "Want some more coffee, Jimmy Clyde?" Miss Madeira had to separate herself from the source of heat that was building in her. She poured herself a glass of water before returning to the table with his fresh cup of coffee. How good it was to have the little kitchen table filled up again. She sat down. The ginger lilies were early this year. Their sweet smell wafted through the screen door. She and Jimmy Clyde both looked out the bay window across the wide lawn, above the thick bed of white blossoms and the trees in the distance. The quiet began to feel awkward to her. "Not a cloud in the sky this morning," she said. "If you ever got one you were completely happy with, would you want to sell it?" asked Jimmy Clyde. "One what?" "A sky, like you said last night." Miss Madeira laughed out loud. "Sell one of my skies? Why, I couldn't give one away." His promise. Miss Madeira laid the rumpled envelope on the nightstand. Was she losing her mind? What had Jimmy Clyde promised her? She looked up at the watercolor on the easel, where a semblance of her lay stretched out on the white wicker chaise lounge with blue cushions. A lacy white scarf, truly a sheer borrowed from one of the living room windows, serpentined its way along her body, covering what needed to be covered. Or nearly. One triangular breast jutted out. Nor was the face hers either. Added last, it was a mask. A pterodactyl's head, he said. Shrunk some. But what promise had Jimmy Clyde made her? She couldn't remember any promise he had made, except that he would never cross his heart and hope to die, tell anyone she had posed for him for this painting. And what had she promised him? She told him she would try to find a print of Les Demoiselles, my French is gone here, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. But she didn't recall putting that in the form of an honest-to-God promise. For a whole afternoon he had carried the art history book around, staring at Picasso's 5 Women, muttering about anatomy and muscles and angles and curves, and how his whittled figures were angular and boxy, just like those women, not curvy like human flesh. He was consumed with the similarities between the 5 Picasso women and his whittled women. It was that night that he had begun the watercolor of Miss Madeira. And what could this bus ticket mean? It was one way. Was Jimmy Clyde suggesting that she give up her teaching job after all these years? What would everyone at the school think? So I hope that encourages you to perhaps take a look at this sweet little novella. Thank you for listening. There's more good stuff in here. And I'd like for you to stay in touch with me, and I'd like to stay in touch with you. So my contact information is the following. I forgot something, which is not unusual for me these days, but it's very important to me to mention the people who have produced my books. So I showed you the Christmas anthologies and also my latest production without telling you that the publisher, I think I mentioned Excalibur Press, but I wanted to mention Linda and Don Parker specifically for helping me, well, first of all, for selecting my short stories for these anthologies, and second, deciding to publish this little book for me. So thank you to Linda and Don. And it seems to me I left out, also this is a very poignant one, because Susan Sheehan is the person who wrote to me and asked me by email if I had anything she could publish when I came home to Alabama. And I said, do you want fiction or poetry? And she said, either one. I could not believe my good luck. Out of that came The Shortest Distance. And our dearly departed Susan, I hope she would have been proud of this next book I published, because her daughter helped me, Stephanie, and it has her imprint on it too. And it has her footprints all over my heart. Thank you.